I lived in a very tiny town when I was a kid. It was the type of place where everyone knew everyone else and what they were doing. We had a school, a church, a small store, and a few simple places to visit. Since our community was so small, not many people needed cars, but most families still had a truck or a car. I went to the elementary school in our town for many years, and I never had any problems. I was in the middle of my time at that school, and my parents trusted me to walk home by myself. Sometimes I would see other neighbors driving around, picking up their kids or doing errands, but no one really paid much attention to people walking. Occasionally we'd exchange a friendly wave, but that was about it. I can't remember how long I had been walking home from school on my own, but I was used to it and never had any problems with people following me or anything like that. Then, during the first rainy season, something happened. Looking back, it's almost like a cliche, but that's when I had an encounter with someone else. I've always loved storms. Walking in the rain felt therapeutic to me. While most people would try to stay dry, I enjoyed being in the rain. Listening to the thunder and the sound of raindrops was calming, and it made me feel like I was connected to nature's rhythm. But on this particular day, just when I was in my peaceful rain moment, a man in a dirty, rusty white truck pulled up. He asked, "Hey kid, need a ride?" I felt unsure. All those years of school and warnings about not talking to strangers or accepting candy or rides from them kept playing in my head like a broken record. "I'm okay, thanks, I'm walking," I told him. He tried to reassure me, saying, "Oh, it's okay, son. I know your parents." But something didn't feel right. Even though he claimed to know my parents, he didn't look familiar. I had never seen him visit our home, and he wasn't a person I recognized around town. I insisted, "No thanks. I like walking." Plus, I wasn't too far from home at that point, so I didn't really need a ride. If he truly knew my parents, he wouldn't have asked me. He would have known that already. He kept pushing, saying, "Come on, son, it's raining really hard out here. Just get in, and I'll take you safely home." I gave him a stern look and firmly said, "No, have a nice day, sir." His eyes widened, probably not expecting such a response from a kid like me. He looked upset and quickly closed his window, then sped away down the street. At that moment, his truck didn't even stop at the stop sign. He just turned right, making his tires screech, and drove away from the street that led out of town instead of heading towards the residential area. When I got home, I told my parents about the strange encounter. They said they had never seen anyone who matched that person's description, and they hadn't seen a truck like that driving around our town before. I never saw that guy again after that day, but it's a creepy memory that has stayed with me since I was a kid. Now I want to share another unsettling incident that happened a few years ago involving my mother and me. It was during my spring break from college, and I had flown down to South Florida to visit my mom. One night, I returned home a little early, around midnight, after spending time with friends. It was a rainy night and the power was going on and off, so I thought it would be a good idea to go to bed. I couldn't watch TV or go online because of the power troubles. My mom also decided to go to bed, but she has trouble sleeping. While she was trying to fall asleep, she heard some noises coming from our backyard. She peeked through the blinds on the window but could only see darkness outside. Then she came into my room and woke me up. She told me that she thought something strange was happening in our backyard. Our backyard has a fence around it, and there's a screened patio that has a locked screen door. We both went to another window and looked through the blinds. I could see some faint shadows, but it was really dark outside. So I decided to turn on the light in our backyard. When I tried to flip the switch, I realized that the power was completely out. That also meant our alarm system wasn't working. I pressed my ear against the glass while staying hidden behind the blinds in my room. I heard a clinking sound, like when you shake an empty aluminum can with a tab from a soda can. I thought I heard voices, but I couldn't be sure because of the rain. After sitting at the window for a few minutes, my mom and I thought maybe it was just our imaginations. We didn't really want to go outside and check. We both said, "There's probably no one outside." I could see that my mom was really worried. Both of us are small women. We each went back to our own rooms, and a few minutes later I heard a loud bang. It was so loud that it echoed through the house. Without thinking, I jumped out of bed and rushed to the window that looked out into our backyard. I ran so fast that I slipped and fell on the tile floor. I got to the window and moved the blinds aside. I saw a faint crack in the glass, and it seemed like it was spreading fast. I realized that the window might break soon. My mom joined me at the window with 2 hurricane flashlights. We shined the lights through the crack, but the glass was still holding. Through the cracked but unbroken glass, we saw our patio door swinging wildly, but there was no one outside. After the storm stopped, we called the police. We all went to the patio door to check it and make sure that the lock had been tampered with. The police officer told us it seemed like there were several people outside based on how the grass and bushes looked. It seemed like the bushes had been stepped on. When it came to the glass, the cops said it didn't seem like someone had hit it with anything because the glass was cracked into many pieces, but it didn't break completely. There was also no sign that something had hit it. After the police left, my mom and I talked it over and thought that maybe the loud bang was the glass breaking due to the pressure change from the storm. That loud sound might have scared away whoever was trying to break in. It all felt very strange and surreal. It was in the middle of August, and the strong, hot wind was blowing, making it feel humid and stormy later in the evening. To the north, dark clouds were gathering and rolling in. The time was around 6:30 p.m., and my date was running late. He hadn't told me where he was taking me. It was meant to be a surprise. But as he kept me waiting for 30 minutes, I couldn't help but wonder what was going on. I stepped out onto the front porch, and I could almost smell the rain approaching. The sky was getting darker. I decided that if he eventually arrived, he could stay at my house until the storm passed. However, I started to worry that he might be on his motorcycle. I really didn't like motorcycles, and I hoped he had chosen to drive his truck instead. The motorcycle I dreaded appeared as the rain started to fall in big, heavy drops. He hopped off the bike and signaled for us to hurry. I told him I wouldn't go with him, rain or no rain. As I never liked riding on motorcycles, he got angrier with me and refused to wait at my place until the storm passed. So he hopped back on the motorcycle and rode off into the rain. As the heavy rain poured down, I looked up and saw flashing blue lights, like the ones on emergency vehicles. I stared for a few minutes, thinking there might be an accident right in front of my house. I could hear screams of pain that seemed to be coming from just a few feet away from me. No one was around me. So I quickly turned to grab my iced tea that I had brought with me onto the porch. But when I turned back, all the lights had vanished. There was no sign of an accident either. I shook my head and started to head back into the house. Just as I turned, I heard the unmistakable roar of his motorcycle starting, followed by screeching tires. I spun around, but there was nothing there. I turned back toward the porch and decided to sit there for a while. I thought maybe the heat had affected me, making me see and hear things. About 20 minutes later, my mom called me from the screen door, saying I had a phone call. I asked her who it was because she knew most of my friends. But my mom said she didn't recognize the voice. So I went to answer the phone. The person on the other end wanted to confirm my name and asked if I was related to Mark, the guy I was supposed to go on a date with earlier. I told them we weren't related. We'd only been dating for a few weeks. Then they told me that my name and phone number were in Mark's back pocket, so I was the first person they called. So it turned out that Mark had been in a motorcycle accident. The roads were wet and slippery, and he lost control, ending up on some sand barrels used as barriers. While they were describing the accident to me over the phone, I looked up and saw flashing red lights again, and I remember the sound of tires screeching. I closed my eyes tightly and said a quiet prayer. When I opened my eyes again, the lights and screeching sounds had disappeared. I was told to get in touch with Mark's parents and go to the hospital. They wouldn't tell me how he was doing over the phone. I informed my mom, and she drove me to Mark's parents' house to deliver the message. We all went to the hospital together. When we got there, Mark's left leg was in a cast that went all the way up to his hip. They had cleaned his scrapes and cuts on his arms and face. He was arguing that he didn't need to wear a cervical collar. Mark ended up staying in the hospital overnight for observation, but he eventually made a full recovery. And so, our paths diverged after that fateful night. Life took its course, and about 3 years later, another motorcycle accident altered Mark's journey once again. This time, it left him with a broken back and pelvis, leading him to bid farewell to motorcycles for good. We both found new directions in life, and sometimes the unexpected twists of fate guide us towards different destinations. This happened when I was 11 years old. I have an older brother who was 16 at that time, and we also have 2 younger brothers. Usually on Friday evenings, our parents would go out for dinner, leaving us at home. They'd order pizza for dinner and put my older brother in charge. But sometimes, my brother would go to his friend's house nearby, and then he'd leave me in charge. I enjoyed this because it meant I could be in charge and pick the movies we'd watch. So on this particular stormy Friday night, it was raining on and off, with occasional flashes of lightning and loud thunder. I was busy watching a movie, and my 2 younger brothers were playing in the carport. It's a big open space where you can park 4 cars. Since my mom and dad weren't home, we had the freedom to skateboard and ride bikes and do lots of fun stuff. There was so much space for activities. Our carport was on the left side, and just beyond it was a park. We didn't have any neighbors on that side, so we often saw people using it as a path for walking their dogs, riding bikes, and even running in the evening because there were some streetlights along the way. If you left our driveway, you could go straight into the park. It was a fantastic place to grow up. On this particular night, my brother was doing his usual thing on the road. He had written down his friend's phone number and left us to enjoy our evening. It was probably in the middle of our second movie when my 2 younger brothers rushed in and told me that a man was watching them from the park near our fence. Usually I'd think they were playing a prank, but the looks on their faces told me something was really wrong. So I decided to check it out. We went back to the carport, stood in the driveway, and looked toward the park. At first, we couldn't see anyone. Then there was a lightning flash, and it lit up enough to show that the man my brother had seen was now in our yard, staring at us. We all screamed, quickly slammed the door shut, and ran to our parents' room. We locked the door, grabbed their phone, took it to the bathroom, and locked that door too. We called my brother's friend's house. His friend answered, and I told him, "There's a man in our yard." He shouted to my brother and said they were coming on their BMX bikes. The wait felt really long, although it was probably just about 5 minutes. Finally, they arrived. When they left, my brother told his friend's parents, and they had called the police. We came back outside when they arrived and called out to us. The police told us that the man had left soon after they arrived, along with another vehicle that went through the park. It was a scary night, but the police searched our house, our yard, the streets, and the park. It made us feel safer at the time, and having my big brother back home was just as comforting as the police being there. He was always fearless and looked out for us. My parents came back home not long after, and there were 2 police cars in our driveway. The neighbors were there too, along with my brother's friend's parents. This happened before mobile phones were common, so I imagine they were pretty worried as they pulled into our driveway, with their hearts probably racing. I don't remember ever hearing about that man again until years later, when I had moved out and my younger brothers took over my room. One night, my dad told me that my younger brother woke up and asked my mom and dad, "Why is there a ghost?" He told them that the ghost said, "Hey boy, are your parents home?" At that time, my parents didn't share this information with us, but it seemed to match up with the moment they replaced the large open window fly screen. The strange man never came back, and things went back to normal. While we didn't forget that night completely, it reminded us to always watch out for each other and stay safe.